Welcome to the Christopher Peter Review. Human beings are not robots. No matter how much training, education, preparation, and experience, people will not always perform in the moment as intended or as hoped for by the external audience. While our flaws and failures may have big impacts, many times in sports we must acknowledge to some degree that the athletes, coaches, and even the officials all operate with the intention of offering fans a competitive fair contest worthy of the sport being played. The first day of the divisional round of the playoffs really tested whether there were good intentions with some critical poor performances by not only the players that are supposed to determine the outcomes, but the people that are simply supposed to enforce the rules, not alter the reality of what we see to make it seem like it is something different. At least that is the feeling that fans of the Buffalo Bills must be feeling following the opening game. The Buffalo Bills once again went on the road, this time to face the top seed in the Denver Broncos. The Bills started the game like you want a road team to do. Get the score in your favor right away and quiet the home crowd. For me, I believe a crucial point in the game came when the Bills blew a major chance to put the inexperienced young Broncos team down by 2 scores early. As they were driving, James Cook, a star running back plagued with ball control issues all season, gave up a fumble that seemed to wake up the Broncos, who in turn put the Bills down by 2 scores not that long after that. For a team with a good defense, but an offense many were not giving fair credit to heading into the game, it would have been interesting for the Bills to see if they could put the top inexperienced Broncos down early and hold them. But they did not capitalize on opportunities all game long. To make matters worse, Josh Allen added another 4 turnovers to the tally in this game, although one was quite controversial, a critical one on a play that should have afforded the Bills a golden opportunity to win the game. I am not sure how an offensive player can catch the ball, land, and not benefit from simultaneous possession at worst. But the referees ruled an interception and then made a couple more controversial decisions that aided the Broncos and doomed the Bills to once again come up short. I agree that at the very least, the ref should have taken another look at that play and ensured that they were making the right call. It was a key moment and pivotal to a playoff game. The play did doom the Bills, but missing a wide-open tight end that could have ended the game in regulation was just as impactful. Giving the Broncos the ball back to instantly kick a field goal did not help their case either. So, while I can agree there was a bad performance by the officiating crew, the Bills did not help themselves. Now, the Broncos will host the AFC Championship game against the New England Patriots, but they will not have their starting quarterback Bo Nix. Instead, former Patriot Jarrett Stidham will face his former team in only his 5th career start and first in the playoffs. A nice situation to face in your first start since 2023. There was no controversy in the night game. The Seahawks ended the game on the very first bit of action by returning the opening kickoff for a touchdown. The Niners proceeded to simply lose more players and really had nothing to offer the Seahawks. The boisterous entrance to the game was no match for the Seahawks' run game, defense, and special teams. The Niners eventually had to pull their starters and wave the white flag. There was no reason to risk a potential injury to a starting quarterback in Brock Purdy who they invested in, who repaid their investment with a second straight game with 2 turnovers. Kyle Shanahan will remain the best coach to not win a Super Bowl. But this season was a showing of the potential he always had as a coach. The busiest room in all of sports was the Niners training room, whose team doctors and training staff certainly earned their paychecks this season. Through it all, Shanahan almost captured the top seed. He will have to regroup and try again. On Sunday, C.J. Stroud showed us that experience is not everything as he threw 4 interceptions in the first half of the game. Stroud has made the playoffs each season of his young career and usually performs pretty well in the opening round. But the second round is the one that proves challenging, usually because he runs into an experienced team. Not this case, where he faced off against the New England Patriots. The game was played in bad weather as was the game in Chicago. Playoff games in the Northeast are great because there is a good chance of having snow. The weather definitely played a role in the quality of the game. But the biggest impact of the outcome was the poor decision-making that resulted in additional drives for the Patriots. To their credit, the Texans did not allow scores off those turnovers besides the pick 6, but those additional drives wear out a team. To be successful in anything, whether sports, business, or anything in life, is being able to make the right decisions more often than not in the biggest moments where it matters the most. In this game, one team was able to limit their mistakes and benefited from a bit of recklessness from their opponent. In the night game on Sunday, the same effect took place in what probably was the best game of the weekend. The Chicago Bears and Los Angeles Rams played a snow game as well in the snowy Windy City, but the game was cleaner than the one in Foxborough, at least on one sideline. But the game overall was close and eventually went to overtime. The pass that Caleb Williams threw to send the game to overtime is an all-time highlight. Unfortunately, he also threw the consequential 3rd pick that eventually led to the loss. The Bears have made a habit of playing bad early and overcoming the adversity they create, but in this game, the Rams were able to limit the mistakes and take advantage of opportunities handed to them.
My perspective. I will assume or at least give the benefit of the doubt that every team had a great week of practice and put in maximum effort in the preparation. Assume that every coach and player did what they needed to do in terms of film study, strategy, and scheme development. The difference was the teams that had the ability to make sound decisions in these pressure-filled moments were the ones that prevailed. The players that were able to leverage their preparation in their execution prevailed. The players that seemed to let the pressure make them press in the moment, created negative plays that doomed their teams. The teams that were more risk-averse and let the game come to them, they won. The teams that let it rip and put the ball in harm's way did not get the benefit of the doubt in this round. It is the playoffs and the talent becomes more condensed as the weeks go on. No room for mistakes anymore. The football season is meant to wean out the weaker teams. Only 14 teams make the playoffs to compete in winner-take-all games. There is no best out of 7. You either win or go home. There is no being blown out in 3 games and winning close in 4 and being crowned. You win or lose. The finality in football is what makes this sport special. The fact every game matters and in the playoffs every moment matters is what makes this special. When the competition gets more intense and difficult, the players able to perform in these pressure cooker moments will prevail. While their opposing counterparts were able to simply do their job without having to go above and beyond to punch their tickets to the conference championship round. Matthew Stafford made some great throws, but did not have to make any highlight reel throws. Just complete the passes and get first downs. Drake May was able to pick his spots and build on what his defense was able to accomplish. Bo Nix had his moments and then was opportunistic when the time came. That touchdown pass to put the Broncos in front was clutch. But he was not doing that all game. Did not have to. Sean McVay said he did not coach a good game. But his players played a good game. Were within themselves for the most part and did not create any unnecessary risk. They just benefited from the times when the Bears did.
Now, my picks. The Broncos face the New England Patriots without their starting quarterback. The Seattle Seahawks will play another rubber game, this time against the San Francisco 49ers. The Broncos will be playing with a quarterback the Patriots scouted and drafted and has not played much. I will take the Patriots in that one. The Seahawks lost the first game to the Niners and won the last 2. The Seahawks lost the first game to the Rams and will try to win this one to win the last 2. The Seahawks did not play overall well in either of the first 2 games. But the Rams have not been dominant in the playoffs so far. Each of the first 2 games, they could and should have lost. In this game, I think the Rams should have an edge. They have more experience and there is that Sam Darnold effect. But, I think this is his moment to exercise the media demons around him. I will pick the upset here because I just do not think the Rams have played well overall and the Seahawks have the opportunity to send another rival home without a doubt. I am a big college football fan. I just love the tradition, pageantry, and iconic brands that define college football. In recent years, the game has changed so much, as players' compensation, conference realignment, and the process of determining the champion have all impacted the feel of the second most popular sport. The national championship game was really a clash of the past and present in a certain manner, a previous iconic brand trying to regain its standing back to the glory days, and the biggest turnaround in sports history with a previous lovable loser chasing a perfect season. The Indiana University Hoosiers had a memorable season that should give hope to other programs that are good academic schools with large alumni bases that could follow suit. They really understood the changing environment and shaped their turnaround to access players that could help them win. They could not change the traditional 5-star talent because they did not have the legacy as the big blue-chip brands. Until now, they can walk into any 5-star recruit now and speak about the quality of coaching they will receive and the opportunity to win and shine for a chance at the NFL. Luckily for us fans, the game was a great one and the only close one the Hoosiers have played in a while. Carson Beck did not get the redemption he was seeking. He was looking to change course after that brutal final game with Georgia. But an ill-fated throw ended that chance to finish his story. But the University of Miami should acknowledge that they are back as a legit contender going forward. Congrats to the Hoosiers and the whole campus and fan base of Indiana University.
As we are now exactly 1 year into the second term of President Donald Trump's non-consecutive presidency, it is a good time to review the events of the past year. Discuss the good, the bad, the highs, and the lows. Every president has defining moments and areas for improvement. In order to do this accurately, I will first remind us of the baseline, which was the Joe Biden presidency, that will serve as a point of comparison. Keep in mind this is being done from an economic and analytical perspective, not a political one. We will review the economic, domestic, and foreign policy of the Biden era. In the economic space, the Biden economy was largely defined by inflation and an overall economic stagnation. The global pandemic and the policies enacted to manage it, combined with both the Russian invasion into Ukraine and the energy policy to focus on green energy and halt domestic production, all contributed to the highest inflation levels in recent American history. In the foreign policy arena, the world was fracturing apart with major conflicts taking place. Of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine started early in the Biden years. Then the Hamas terrorist attack of Israel joined the set of global challenges midway through it. All the while, there were potential other smaller conflicts popping up. Also, there was controversy over its perceived blunder in the withdrawal from Afghanistan. On the domestic front, the biggest issue was the crisis of illegal immigration that reached almost all corners of the United States, to the point that American citizens and legal residents were seeing illegal immigrants being housed in luxury hotels and being dropped off in communities in the middle of the night. Also, the deterioration of American cities were clear and evident as the approach to crime was allowing suspects to avoid justice and return to continue their acts or punish the victims who trusted that law enforcement may remove that bad actor from the community. All the while, there were major questions regarding the governance of the Biden administration, where afterwards we found out through tell-all books that Joe Biden was not really the person making the biggest decisions or might not have been aware of what was going on.
Let me start with economic policy. The biggest challenge that needed to be addressed was affordability, which was an obvious issue when you experience inflation. When inflation raises the general cost of goods and services, the price level does not automatically recede when the growth of inflation slows down. Growth will naturally appear slower when the base year changes, but the impact on market affordability is still there. Coming into office, the issue of affordability was a major area of concern for voters and consumers, rightfully, and let us discuss how Trump has performed in this area. In many ways, Trump did make a significant impact to reduce the cost of living for Americans. The executive orders to restore domestic energy production led to an eventual shift in the energy market that lowered gas prices, as the production entered the consumer segment of the market. In a weird manner, the tariffs that were feared to raise cost on top of the inflation probably helped reduce cost, and it pulled materials into domestic inventories and alleviated the supply chain aspect of the inflation issue, reducing the cost. There are still areas of concern, like housing and healthcare, but those are not going to be overnight issues, as some of these are regulatory and public policy impacts that call for shifts from our past approaches. I think that we should probably be starting to roll back these tariffs, as we got what Trump seemed to pursue. He wanted to use them to get better trade deals, and we reached a number of trade deals with nations that we needed concessions from. Another area would be to further discuss ideas to improve the cost of healthcare. The idea of giving funds directly for people to use in the purchase of insurance could potentially do what the original intent of Obamacare was supposed to do. Remember, part of the program was to put the consumer in the driver's seat, but Obamacare actually put the insurance company in the ultimate position of power and made them the main beneficiary of the program. Coverage got worse, cost went up, and insurance really controlled what was under the plan or not, based on their profitability. Funding the people and creating that incentive to shift the market to better meet the consumer needs, because it could change the service chains to fit what the consumer can afford rather than what they can get consumers to pay and the government to coerce them to buy. We want a market that is responsive to each consumer at the level of need and ability to pay. There are still economic issues that need to be addressed, but I do think that the economy is headed in a much better direction than it was under the Biden economic plan, or whichever aide created the Biden economic plan.
On the domestic policy front, the main component of the policy change was around illegal immigration. The Biden administration essentially looked the other way when it came to illegal migration, visa overstays, and all that went along with it. As these illegal immigrants reached communities, especially in blue states, the notion that this was acceptable changed overnight. The question remained whether something actually could be done about it. Because in the past, even when the border was tightened up, the people that made it in were largely allowed to stay. So as long as they committed their federal immigration crime before the government was actually enforcing the law, it was overlooked. President Trump changed the precedent on this by removing illegal immigrants and sending them back to their nation of origin. The penalty for illegal immigration is supposed to be removal back to your nation of origin, which President Trump is simply enforcing existing federal law and holding the people committing this crime accountable, focusing on the worst first. Yes, violating laws is a crime. For some, the idea of deportation and what it actually looks like is what is the concern. The militarized approach to rounding up groups of these illegals and sending them back at the same time. Keep in mind the Biden administration did the exact opposite in releasing these individuals by busloads in the middle of the night. In some cases, 2 o'clock in the middle of the night near a transportation hub to further disperse them. The approach now is simply doing the opposite and reeling them back in to send them back home where they can actually follow the legal process and come back properly. I believe people expected it to be simply a notice sent to a person that they must leave and that person would be able to ignore it, unless they committed another crime. In reality, why allow them to commit additional crimes? And we should not ignore the bulk of these individuals that already committed crimes here or in their home nation. Additionally, the Trump administration has stepped up and aided communities without them asking with deployment of the National Guard to help reduce crime, which has seemed to have made a positive impact based on some reporting. Because of the policies that people deemed as anti-law enforcement, there were many communities manipulating the appearance of public safety by not prosecuting based on identity rather than fact. Local progressive leaders would claim improvements in public safety that were not felt by the actual residents living in those municipalities. The crime in our nation's capital was a big problem, which some residents claimed afterwards that they finally felt safe to walk around without fear of violence. Not a major policy shift. Simply enforcing the law as it is on the books. Other areas of the domestic policy include keeping biological men out of women's sports, which is gaining traction. This really protects the safety of biological women who have the right to compete in a fair and safe environment. As noted, there is nothing stopping the biological men who consider themselves otherwise to play against biological men. Now, the changes to vaccine schedules has riled some people who are completely obedient to the traditional model. There are people who want to ease the restrictions, as they see no reason in making a personal choice. Others believe the herd mentality view. The change was intended to afford people the right to make a choice for themselves. Other domestic issues have been the politics around the Epstein files, which have been slow, but not really impactful except for the politics of it. The more impactful aspect would be to track the donations and who received money for their campaigns. The area for opportunity in this space is to end the practice of lawfare. It was crystal clear that the Democrats used lawfare to target their political opponents and people throughout the nation that viewed issues differently than them. A different party doing the same wrong practice is not appropriate. If there is a legitimate crime that should be prosecuted, then prosecute in line with precedent.
In the foreign policy space, there was a clear fracturing of the once connected, or perceived to be connected, during the Biden era. The Russian invasion of Ukraine rocked the world and pushed the world into allies versus the enemies. NATO nations aligned with Ukraine and China, North Korea, Iran and Belarus ran to Russia's defense, and war continued with checks being written without any attempt to end the conflict. The Hamas terrorist attack against Israel created another global conflict, which the foreign policy at the time did little to try to manage. It really showed that some on the left may be sympathetic to the wrong element, but there was no path forward to identify what justice would look like and a path to end the conflict. President Trump claimed to be able to end the conflicts in one day, but that was largely campaign speak. But what the Trump administration did achieve was a historic peace deal in the Middle East, and at least brought parties together to flesh out ideas on how peace may be achieved between Russia and Ukraine. It was far from a pretty picture and plenty of tense moments. There have been some additional regional conflicts that have been resolved by Trump's intervention, which he deserves credit for. But the main issue will be if he can negotiate an end to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. To his credit, he at least engaged with both sides and not just continued to write a blank check or look the other way. The rebalancing of trade has been a major action in the foreign policy space. The use of tariffs to rewrite our trade deal seems to have been effective. And the effect of the tariffs were not as impactful as some in the media tried to make them appear. There were issues with protectionism that harmed global trade. Now, my preferred approach would be to use tariffs against our enemies and not our allies. But I do think that we need our allies to act like our allies and not cozy up to our enemies. There is room for improvement in how we engage with our global partners and how they actually work to live up to their commitments. I think we need to be careful with rampant regime change. Bringing a criminal authoritarian to justice can be a positive, but it can set a bad precedent. Hopefully, Venezuela can embrace change and actually switch to a market-based economy that will actually benefit the people and break ties with communists and extremists.
Overall, I think the past year has been very impactful and there has been more done than in the prior 4 years. I do not think we should gloss over the reality that has been brought to light by book after book about the issues with governance amongst the Biden White House. The first year with Trump back in office has improved our economy, which is steadily growing now that his policies are in effect. And we may see the gains we have been promised. Not that legislation will take effect this year. But time will tell. There has been room for improvements as well. I do not think picking a fight with a person you appointed is the best approach. Although there is real reason to agree with the position that he may not be executing monetary policy to the best of his ability. Politically, Trump has put his opposition in a bind. They are clearly and purposefully aligning themselves with the fringe and bad actors of our society and the world. They have supported political violence, advocated against public servants, and been exposed to have stolen public funds. Consider the state of Minnesota is training people to watch feds, but did little to train people to properly oversee the handling of taxpayer dollars. Democrats stand against those protecting our society in defense of those harming our society and economy. That is not the political positioning that you want ever. The Republicans have room for improvement as well. They cannot simply go along for the ride or be conservative when convenient and something else when they want to benefit. If you promised principled leadership, then let us see that in how you vote and construct legislation. Do not throw a pity party because people are honest about your prospects of winning an election. Things have moved in the right direction, but we must build on progress, not break from it. As always, we prefer that we remove chaos and ensure the process is transparent. We understand the nature of politics, but approaches can be better at times. Thank you for experiencing this episode of the Christopher Peter Review. Your viewership is appreciated and valued. Please follow the Christopher Peter Review on social media and continue to visit www.crcreview.com for new episodes of the Christopher Peter Podcast and the CRC. Thank you once again. Until next time.